you. How are you? What's it? Okay.
Pleasure. Scott Newman. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, please. Everybody Makiko's asylum actually. She's sick.
Yes.
That will be there.
Oh, that's all.
It's
Yeah, okay.
And then if we have
She's coming
questions
later,
from
but
the
yeah.
audience,
Yeah.
we'll take those.
Yes.
But if not, I'll maybe pose one additional question to you. I'll make it an easy one.
Please.
Yeah,
No problem.
I guess if there is no question, then you can answer. You feel free about any questions.
Oh my God.
if everyone's okay, we can get started. Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, friends and colleagues. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the CED7-Side Event, Strengthening the Environment Health Nexus and One Health in Asia and the Pacific. My name is Scott Newman. I'm the Senior Animal Health and Production Officer based at FAO's Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, and I'll be serving as your moderator for this event. I would like to just point out one or two housekeeping issues just to have everyone be aware, and then we'll get started with the program. First, just for the purposes of awareness, this event is being recorded, and at the conclusion, we will make the recording available to colleagues through the internet, through a link at the ESCAP website. As well, we would like to encourage everyone who has questions during the session to please put your questions in the chat box, and we'll be monitoring those questions and follow up. So without further ado, I would like to invite Sangmin Nam, the Director of the Environment and Development Division at ESCAP, to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, good afternoon, excellencies and participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this side event on strengthening the environment health nexus and One Health in Asia Pacific, co-organized by ESCAP, FAO, UNEP, and WHO. Throughout the 7th session of a committee, which is being held from yesterday until tomorrow, we have heard about the different challenges related to the state of our environment, and they all, to various extent, determine our health and well-being. Human health in Asia Pacific is threatened by extreme weather events, poor air quality, unsafe and insecure food and water, as well as increasing risk of zoonotic disease, all driven by climate change and ecosystem degradation, as our experts, as you are well aware. It is also estimated that almost 1/4 of the global environmental burdens of disease will arise from 14 Southeast and East Asian countries. These negative trends are likely to further increase due to complex combination of ecological tipping points, population growth, and continued urbanization, as well as demographic trends such as aging. It is also estimated that costs of natural and biological hazards resulting from the impact of climate change, biodiversity loss, and current food system may reach over $7 trillion per year in the next decades. Such costs are heavy, but it can be avoided if we address environmental health risks in an integrated way. The One Health approach, which has been there for many years, but it's really reviving now, builds on multi-sectoral collaboration, provides important opportunities to enhance resilience, save lives, and reduce costs. So this is also well now recognized in ESCAP with our resolution this year, in fact, Bangkok Declaration. ESCAP member states recognized the value of an integrated One Health approach, including acknowledging that One Health has been extended to include the wider environment beyond a focus only on infectious disease. So this is quite a new development for ESCAP, and in this context, we are really pleased to have a new partnership with other sister organizations in the UN system and also various national partners. So building on this collaboration, we have developed together with the IISD a policy guide that maps out very concrete opportunities to mainstream the environmental health nexus in public policies, and also including national adaptation plans and NDCs, National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, NBSAPs, and by promoting sustainable ecosystems as a pillar of our food security and health plans. An integrated approach to environmental health nexus is necessary to ensure the well-being of our people and achievement of all sustainable goals. So transforming environmental health governance in the Asia-Pacific region is complex, but some good examples from across the region exist already. So I look forward to hearing about this in this side event. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much, Sangmin, for these very nice opening remarks that really sets the scene and places the context within which we go forward in our side event here. I think that as you've highlighted, we have a new opportunity here to forge forward with broader partnerships and relationships as technical agencies and development partners to really broaden the scope of One Health. And this is really at the heart of what we want to try to do as we move forward together. So thank you very much. Okay, I am asked to provide the next short presentation myself. So if we can switch over to those slides, that would be great. And I will be presenting on the One Health and moving forward from the old to the new paradigm, and really trying to explain the role of the environment in the context of One Health. And I think I have to do that for a moment, and then I'll switch it back. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right, super. Okay. All right, as I think everybody realizes, Asia and the Pacific region is really a highly dense place with a lot of people. And we recognize that this large density of people, which reflects more than 60% of the global population, is a big driver of development and what's happening here in the region. Now, one of the elements is that we need to continue to think about food security for all these people and how to produce all this food. While it is a very successful effort that we've had in the past in creating nutrition and food security, we also know that there are some potential detriments associated with food production. And the implications on the environment include environmental degradation, production of greenhouse gases, use of very large volumes of fresh water. And as a result, what we see is that there's also been a decline parallel and at the same time as the development of all these agricultural infrastructures, there's been a decline in biodiversity and ecosystem services. And so the challenge that we are up against is how do we continue to provide the appropriate nutrition and food security and at the same time no longer have negative impacts on the environment, and in fact at the same time as producing the same amount or more food, we want to do it in a sustainable way so that we are no longer having negative impacts. Now, we also know that in addition to the large number of people in the region, we also have a very large density of livestock that is part of our food and nutrition security. We also recognize particularly pigs and poultry are the big ones in this region, but at the same time, there's also a lot of wildlife. And in fact, there is free-ranging wildlife, but also a very large farmed wildlife population that's out there as well. And these animals are being produced in a way that is serving both food and nutrition needs, as well as trade and other pet and other uses for display. So there's a variety of reasons, but we know that we've got these three groups of animals that basically can mingle, be in close contact, and this increases the risk of the disease spillover that has very much caught our attention, particularly with the pandemic that we're currently experiencing. This slide just shows some of the diseases and the costs. And I think just the most important thing to take away from this is that we have animal diseases that are affecting wildlife populations, wildlife conservation efforts, and tourism. We also have diseases that are impacting agricultural production and trade and economies and food security and livelihoods of people. And so this is in the millions of dollars, the impact of these diseases. When we talk about the healthcare costs, it's in the trillions of dollars. And when we talk about the global economic impact, particularly, for example, of COVID-19, we're talking about trillions. So this is a very significant economic issue for us to get a hold of. One point that I want to make very clear, and especially as we're trying to look at how the environment plays a role in One Health, is that deforestation has very strong links to disease emergence and disease prevalence. And we know that literally there's a strong relationship between deforestation and vector-borne diseases, malaria cases. And in addition, when we alter forests or alter habitat and have replacement of the normal biodiversity by those species that are adapted to come in and take over in these disturbed environments, these disturbed habitats, they tend to be rodents and bats. And rodents and bats happen to be two groups of animals that actually carry the largest number of diseases that we as people are at risk of getting through spillover. And so these are very important and significant things for us to take on board as we go forward. If you take a look at the Intergovernmental Panel's report on climate change, and particularly the impacts of global warming, we can see across all elements of One Health that climate change is having an impact. And you know, we can look at water, ecosystems, cities, food systems, and health, and there is an implication for those climate change issues. And this is, again, one of those areas where if we address climate change, we are having a broad scale impact and a One Health positive benefit to these issues by addressing climate warming and climate change. So One Health, I think we've sort of highlighted why we need it. And I think that we've also featured what's gotten the world's attention to date, which are the big diseases that have caused major disruptions at a global level. But there are other elements like pollution, like globalization, poverty, and migration that also are part of this story. Now, the gaps that we see in One Health are largely featured by the fact that the public health and veterinary sectors have been the ones delivering One Health to date. The work has focused on zoonotic diseases that spill over from animals to people, antimicrobial resistance, and food safety. And as a result, there have been training programs put in place to support these sectors for in-service professionals. What we don't have is the similar parallel training program or actually the engagement of the environment sector in these One Health policies, initiatives, and approaches. And so where we need to go in the future is we first need to engage the environment sector appropriately. Second, we need to create their capacity so that they can contribute as an equal partner in One Health. And finally, we need to ultimately have the priorities and mandates of the environment professionals as part of the national One Health programs and priorities and initiatives. And this is kind of where we feature the way forward with the engagement of the environment sector. Now, recently, as of December 2021, the One Health high-level expert panel created a new definition of One Health, which was significant because it includes now wildlife and ecosystems. Previously, we were just focused on humans and animals. And so now we have the mandate to address threats to health and the threats to ecosystems. So you can see the very large role that the environment sector can play. And we also know that the new definition talks about protecting and restoring biodiversity, preventing further environmental degradation, promoting the health of humans, animals, plants, and ecosystems, and then finally acknowledging the very close linkages and how we all are interdependent on the health of the environment. Again, One Health previously was focused on detecting and responding to diseases. That was the big focus. Where we're talking about the environment sector coming in is further upstream. It's on the left. It's about prevention. It's about preparedness. And it's about mitigating even the potential for these problems to occur. Some of the main areas that we think the environment sector can contribute to involve preserving and restoring habitats, biodiversity, and ecosystems, helping support climate change adaptation and mitigation, and addressing waste, effluent, and pollution. To a large extent, these are areas that the environment sector could lead. And we see in the table prepared on the right side of this, of the arrows, that there are also very strong linkages to sustainable development goals, as well as multilateral environmental agreements and other environmental initiatives and protocols, et cetera. Areas where the environment sector could also play an important contributing role and collaborate with other sectors involves land use planning and mitigating encroachment, as well as sustainable, climate smart, eco-friendly development. And so again, these are where collaborative opportunities exist, but there's certainly a very strong role that the environment sector should be playing, and they should be a partner with us all who are already delivering One Health. And again, in the opening remarks, reference to nationally determined contributions, Paris Agreement commitments, these types of things need to be linked to the agriculture sector's production approaches. And finally, wildlife management and farming and trade, as well as food safety along value chains where there are informal markets and where wildlife and domestic animals mix. Again, there is a role, particularly with links to CBD, CITES, Convention of Migratory Species, et cetera. So again, these are opportunities. Particularly on the food systems transformation, we know that land use planning, climate smart agriculture, agroecological and nature-based solutions all have a role. And so these are, again, these opportunities that we need to think about how to implement going forward. I won't go into the details, but these are some of the global initiatives that are shaping One Health. And I think that I just want to mention the quadripartite now has included UNEP as a new member in addition to FAO, WHO, and WOA. And this is very significant because the environment sector now has a front seat with the international community at helping promote and facilitate One Health. And in our next presentation, we'll hear about the One Health Joint Plan of Action. So with that, I will leave you with this last initiative that really is trying to help build that capacity for the environment and wildlife professionals to be equal partners and to be able to contribute to One Health policy and programming. And this is a new program that's just coming online that's a rather large collaboration with many partners. So with that, thank you very much. Okay, I'll put back my moderator role. And what I would like to do next is I would like to invite Gandra Gungal to please make a presentation on the One Health Joint Plan of Action. Gungal is with WHO CIRO, and he will deliver this presentation also with Makiko Yashiro, who is with UNEP at the regional office here in Thailand. So over to you, Gungal and Makiko.
Thank you very much, Scott. I, Gyanendra Gungal, and Makiko Yashiro, UNEP, are pleased to make presentation on quadripartite One Health initiative. And since it is hybrid meeting, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. As highlighted by previous speakers, there is a growing importance of One Health, and it is discussed in various platforms, G20, G7, World Health Assembly, and World One Health Congress. And there was also UN Food System Summit last year, which underlined the need for collective action and coalition building at all levels. And government and organizations call for further support to mainstream One Health policies at global, regional, and country level. As highlighted by Scott, creation of by quadripartite, FAO, WHO, World Organization for Animal Health, and United Nations Environment Program. There is a One Health high-level expert panel, which came up with definition of One Health in December 1st, 2021, just 1 year ago. And there was 27th tripartite annual executive meeting, which agreed to jointly develop a strategy and action plan to prevent future zoonotic pandemics through One Health approach. And it is also linked to Sustainable Development Goal. On March 17, 2022, there is a commitment of 4 regional director generals of 4 organizations to come up with a quadripartite initiative on One Health. And there is joint vision and commitment to support member states, and there is whole of the society approach. And we want to have synergy and try to avoid duplication, synergize our action. And we have to mobilize investment for operationalization of One Health at the country level. One Health, as it was already mentioned, now it is integrated unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. And it recognizes the health of human, domestic, and wild animals, plants, and the wider environment, including ecosystem that are closely linked, interactive, and interdependent. And we have to highlight that 75% of the zoonotic pathogen which emerge are of animal origin, and that is going to increase rather than decrease because of globalization, urbanization, and close interact between human and animal and wildlife because of deforestation and development and other aspects. So we came up with One Health Joint Plan of Action. It is a collaborative, participatory effort among the 4 organizations with support from One Health high-level expert panel. So as it was mentioned, there is need of coordination, collaboration, and communication, and we have to build country capacity to develop this One Health governance system so that it is inclusive and it is joint activity that will facilitate various activities which are planned under One Health Joint Plan of Action. So we have to address those issues at the community level as well as through various discipline and sectors. What is the objective and aim of One Health Joint Plan of Action? The major thing is guide the 4 organizations to work together on One Health and try to support 4 organization members and member states, state parties to build One Health initiative. And there are framework for action, and it proposes 6 action track that will enable countries to advance and sustainably scale up One Health in managing health threats that is emerging at human, animal, plant, and environmental interfaces. As I mentioned earlier, there are 6 action tracks which are interrelated, and action track 1 is One Health governance, enhancing One Health capacities to strengthen health system. There should be system approach. And action track 2, reducing the risk from emerging and re-emerging zoonotic epidemics and pandemics, which is focus of all of us. So there is also discussion about pandemic treaty. And action track 3, there are endemic, zoonotic, neglected, tropical, and vector-borne diseases, and we have to control and eliminate these diseases because they are prevalent in tropical countries, low and middle-income countries. We cannot ignore those diseases like rabies, parasitic zoonosis. Action track 4, strengthening assessment, management, and communication of health food safety risk, because we have seen a lot of food safety event that has international importance, and it is spread from one country to another because of globalization of food trade. Action track 5, curbing the silent pandemic of antimicrobial resistance. Last week, we celebrated World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, and that is going to be very, very important because by 2050, 10 million people are dying not due to non-availability of antibiotics, but because they are not going to work. Action track 6, last but not least, integrating the environment into One Health. So One Health governance, we have to create One Health coordination mechanism, and there should be system thinking, and there should be joint planning. All parties should be involved from the very beginning, that is planning, and there should be One Health workforce development. There should be availability of operational tool and mechanism, and we should also monitor how we are moving towards implementation of OSJPA, and there should be sustainable financing. And that's why 4 organizations, we came together to work at the country level. Action track 2, reducing risk from emerging and re-emerging zoonotic epidemics and pandemics. We have to understand driver of emergence, spillover, and spread of zoonotic pathogen. And we cannot handle everything, so we have to identify and prioritize targeted evidence-based upstream intervention to prevent emergence, spillover, and spread of zoonotic pathogen. And we also need to strengthen national, regional, and global One Health surveillance, early warning, and response system. Action track 3, it is related to controlling and eliminating endemic, zoonotic, neglected, tropical, and vector-borne diseases. So it should be community-centric and risk-based solution. And we have to work at with the community engagement, and there is a need of political commitment and investment for prevention, control, and elimination and eradication of these diseases which are prevalent in many low and middle income countries. Action track 4, strengthening assessment, management, and communication of food safety risk. And we have to strengthen national capacities for food control and risk-based food inspection based on Codex standard, and promote One Health approach for food safety coordination. Climate change has also impact on food security as well as food safety. And we have to utilize and improve food system data and analysis, scientific evidence, and risk assessment in developing policy, making risk management decisions, and strengthen national foodborne disease surveillance system and try to promote operational research for detection, monitoring of foodborne diseases and food contamination under One Health approach. Action track 5, AMR is a emerging problem. It is a silent tsunami. So here we should try to develop country-specific, context-specific collaborative One Health work and try to reinforce global regional initiative and programs, and also strengthen global AMR governance structure. Now I would like to hand over to Makiko.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gongo. So now I'd like to talk briefly about Action Track 6, which focuses on integrating the environment into One Health. And as you can see, there are 4 main areas covered under this action track, which are very much focused on protecting and restoring nature and preventing the degradation of ecosystems and the wider environment to jointly support the health of people, animals, plants, and ecosystems. Next slide, please. The first area focuses on scaling up our efforts in protecting the environment and addressing environmental issues that pose serious threats to people's health. And here, activities include, for example, multi-stakeholder partnerships for sustainable management of nature and prevention, reduction, and control of various types of pollution. The second area focuses on mainstreaming the environment into the One Health approach, which includes, for example, integrating mandates, priorities, functions, and knowledge of environmental sectors into One Health policies and initiatives. And for this, we need to really raise awareness and incentivize the participation of environmental sector into One Health initiatives. The third area looks more at integrating environmental knowledge, data, and evidence in One Health decision-making processes. And the fourth area relates to what Scott mentioned earlier, and really looking at creating a One Health and in-service training program for the environment, medical, agriculture, and veterinary sector professionals. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide of our presentation. In terms of take-home messages, just to highlight the fact that One Health is not a new concept, but it really provides a holistic approach to address issues and challenges, and particularly now with an additional focus on the environmental dimensions. And there is a growing recognition of the importance of One Health, but what we need now is to translate the concept into real actions on the ground through country-level activities. And this is where our partnerships among the Quadripartite Alliance and other partners at regional and national level will play a key role. And I would also like to emphasize the importance of ownership, leadership, and partnership as essential factors for successful implementation of One Health initiatives, and particularly in engaging with the environmental sector in the One Health initiatives, ensuring their understanding and ownership and support is key. And I'd like to conclude this presentation by saying that there are no healthy planet without a healthy, no healthy people without a healthy planet. So let us work towards the successful implementation of One Health initiatives by fully integrating environmental dimensions and also through active engagement with the environmental sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Makiko and Gongo, for a great presentation that helps us understand the One Health Joint Plan of Action, the framework that it provides for implementing One Health along the 6 action tracks. And particularly, Makiko, your final words of how do we translate these areas of work into in-country and on-the-ground level implementation. That is really where the challenge lies for those of us who are working in this field. And I think that that's largely going to be dependent on really working together as a team to address these issues at national level. And opening up, as you said, the opportunity for the environment sector professionals to really be part of One Health initiatives, planning One Health policies, and also prioritizing One Health areas of work. So thank you both for a great presentation. Next, I would like to note that we're going to have the second presentation that really is sort of the high-level presentations on some of the important initiatives that are underway. Next, we're going to hear from Yi-An to present on behalf of ESCAP the launching of the policy guide. And I know that this has been quite a long process to come to fruition, and I think that this is really a great example of the accomplishments of a large team effort, and particularly led by IISD and ESCAP with a variety of partners. So Yi-An, over to you for a presentation.
Thank you very much, Scott. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yi-An from ESCAP, and I'm very happy today to present to you some of the key messages of the policy guide we co-developed with IISD, FAO-UNEP, and WHO on operationalizing the environment health nexus in Asia and the Pacific. So we've heard from previous presentations that the environment health risks are really increasing in Asia Pacific, and the region really is the hotspot of that risk. And the joint action between the environment and health sector can really help address these risks at their root cause, and also develop a lot of co-benefits to address the SDGs in a much more cost-effective way. So this policy guide, we examine the existing gap of the environment health nexus in Asia and the Pacific, and propose a number of key recommendations. And I'd like to walk you through 5 of these recommendations. So the first one is about mainstreaming the environment health nexus in public policies, and there are many opportunities to do so in Asia and the Pacific. For this policy guide, we review 15 national health plans, and we see that all of the plans reference the social determinants of health. Less than half of these plans actually reference the environment determinants of health, which really doesn't match up to the increasing environment health risks we are seeing in the region. So this is the opportunity where the environmental sector could come in to strengthen that front. And same goes with the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan. Of 15 plans we review in the region, 9 countries have at least one biodiversity target related to health and well-being, but only 6 of them identify working with the Ministry of Health. And while food systems play an important role linking biodiversity on one side and health on the other side, only 3 of the plans mention food systems and balanced diets. So this is the gap where it can be strengthened. And we see really good opportunity to do so as we welcome the new the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So country can really seize that opportunity to mainstream the nexus better there. And the last, in terms of climate change and health nexus, this is relatively well developed in the Asia Pacific region, but as you can see in the last box of the slide, we see there still remains some gaps for the health sectors to be more involved in the reporting framework, so under UNFCCCs. And also the environmental sectors can also be more engaged in the health national adaptation plans that is led by health ministries. For example, to engage in monitoring climate sensitive health risks, to make the plans really more coherent and comprehensive. And the second point is related to multi-sectoral governance. Of all the plans we examined in Asia Pacific, every country recognized it is important to strengthen multi-sectoral governance. So the question really is, how do we do it? And we heard from many stakeholders that it is important to speak the same language. So we need to invest in harmonizing terminologies and communications. Also, it could be helpful to establish formal agreements between different ministries. And importantly, we need to identify a lead agent to really drive action. And there are multiple lessons learned we can learn from COVID response. Most Asia-Pacific countries have established multi-sectoral health committee during COVID to really provide integrated and timely response to health incidents. And these committees or other multi-sectoral initiatives can be expanded to better include the health sector. And same goes with the One Health coordination bodies that many countries already have. If these can be expanded to include the health sectors and can have a role in national policy decision bodies, these are really low-hanging fruits that can deliver good outcomes for both environment and health for people in the region. And the third, so multi-sectoral governance really needs to be underpinned by integrated data and assessment. And these data should not only support preventive management action, but also help identify the most vulnerable populations for priority action. And in the policy guide, we provide a couple of available resources that can support countries in making decisions. For example, there is the Global Atlas of Environmental Justice, which provide a lot of maps to support decision. And there's also FAO Food System dashboards and the ESCAP Asia Pacific Resilience Portal. And also environmental impacts assessment and national ecosystem assessment are really powerful tools that country can use. So these guidelines can be enhanced by include more comprehensive environment health screening factors and really better include the health sector stakeholders in the process. Also, valuation would be really important to improve EIA and NEAs to help making decisions. And as you can see in the graph, nature really is health vital supporting system, and ultimately ecosystem services equal environmental determinant of health. So this should be better accounted for. And the fourth point, promoting human rights-based approach and stakeholder engagement. Recently, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution on human rights to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And so this is a good opportunities for countries to assess their national institutions in terms of where other gaps to strengthen human rights. And also we should ensure that the environmental rights of the most vulnerable population, including women, children, indigenous communities, and other communities at risk. We should ensure their access to environmental information, make sure they are included in decision making, and really help to build capacity there. And the last point on integrated environmental health funding streams. We cannot emphasize enough that finance really is critical for driving a lot of the changes. And we see that the World Bank and the GEF are prioritizing projects with co-benefits. And same goes with the Ministry of Finance of different countries, I believe. So environment health nexus projects can really make a strong case for investment by bringing different sectors together and emphasize on these co-benefits they can deliver for both environment, health, and other social economic development targets. And nature-based solutions would make a very good portfolio, for example, because it could really develop co-benefits for a lot of purpose, and investment should prioritize those ecosystem functions that really help reduce risks and enhance health outcomes. And finally, this is my last slide. We cannot emphasize enough that regional collaboration would be really important to enhance all these enabling factors we mentioned. Policy coherence, finance, data, regional collaboration are really important, and this could build on existing regional initiatives we are seeing. And in the policy guide, you could see we also have a lot of case studies from the region. So we really see the environment health nexus and the more environmentally comprehensive One Health gaining traction in the region. And we look forward to hearing more best practices from the roundtable and beyond. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Yan Chen. That was really a fantastic presentation on the policy guide, and I know you've been very strategic in helping facilitate that being launched today, and particularly, I think that the reference to some of the examples that already exist in this region that could be information that is shared across countries, among countries, but also be potentially scaled up. I think that's where there's some really rich opportunities, as you've mentioned, and I think that that's one additional area that we should be thinking about. The other thing that I think is very interesting is how do we place the elements that you featured from the policy guide in relation to the joint plan of action that we heard about from Gungal and Makiko, and I think that this is again where a real opportunity for the work that ESCAP has done and ISD and the partners on the development side really have an opportunity to bridge with the people who are working on that joint plan of action. I know that it's some of the same partners, but I think there's really a rich opportunity for some integration here in the region to support the member countries. So thank you very much. Okay. Next, we will move to our roundtable, and we have the opportunity here at our roundtable to have some very distinguished speakers who will, again, hopefully provide us with further insights on the opportunities that they've been able to identify and the areas where they think interventions are really possible in the context of broadening up One Health. And the first, I'm going to introduce the four panelists first, and then I will ask them each in order to make an intervention. We will then open up the floor for any questions. Again, those of you with us on Zoom, please put any questions you may have for the panelists into the chat, and we'll capture those. And then we will also open up for a broader Q&A session at the end of the four presentations. So the first distinguished panelist is His Excellency Amina Yavuli, Ambassador of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Fiji. The second distinguished panelist is Professor Nitish Debnath, the National Coordinator, One Health Bangladesh. Our third is Ms. Marilyn Santiago, Program Officer at the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. And the fourth is Fithriya Iskankdar, who is our youth representative with the ASEAN Youth Forum. And I think as we all recognize, the youth is our future. And as those of us who are sitting up here at the front table move on professionally, we need better, stronger minds to replace us. And I think that you know, this is our opportunity to hear from that other generation that's coming up and being empowered to take over. So without further ado, can I ask His Excellency Amina Yavuli to please present to us your thoughts from the perspective of Fiji. Over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Is it Scott?
Yes.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, moderator. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important roundtable. I feel that the nexus of climate and health are critical correlations that needs to be strengthened both at all levels, first at all levels, and also in terms of documenting the best practices. And I really agree with Lian. Yeah. And in terms of the leadership role that is required in here. And unless there is a clear, distinguished leadership role in terms of identifying, the role, the nexus between climate and health, it will still become blurred, particularly when bringing it to the climate space, as she correctly identified. Coherence with the climate, UNEP CCC and the Paris Agreement. For those of you who have been involved in climate negotiations, you know that this kind of issues hardly appears because of the stress in climate negotiation. And I'm sure my colleague Dashan knows that, an old colleague from climate negotiations. For the Pacific, as you already know, and I don't have to belabor the point in terms of our vulnerable situations due to climate change, and also our health apparatus in terms of health policies are also being faced with stiff challenges. So for us, the vision for the Pacific Island countries are calling for countries and communities within the next decade the capacity to anticipate and respond to health consequences of climate change. This is a vision which has to be made into reality, where health sector must play a leading role. And again, I go back to that point. Unless it is brought up to that level, of visibility of the optics, and where the policy support and coherence are fully embracing the health sector, the nexus or the consequences of climate change on all our individuals, on our communities and our people will continue to be underreported, will continue to be not seen in the lens as magnified at the global level. So for us in the Pacific, this is a concern that that our health ministers and our health ministries, particularly for Fiji, in trying to move forward and strengthen the effective addressing of climate-induced health scenarios. So the health sector continues to show the way by committing to reducing its environmental impacts through efforts such as transitioning to renewable energy sources, to help us to manage our healthcare waste, and also to step into leadership roles where it can catalyze intersectoral and international actions required to counter the rising climate crisis, resulting in better health outcomes for all. I have some statistics with me, but due to time, I'm not going to raise it here. But again, the point that I would just like to raise is that climate-induced health diseases or mortality are happening in the Pacific. For instance, in mortality and injury, Fiji and the Pacific, for instance, particularly for the big islands, already faces flood risks. Not only in the Pacific, you're seeing that in Pakistan, in other countries, in India, that are facing flood risks, and there are loss of lives due to drowning. So these are related to climate. And in terms of heat, we have heat waves affecting countries. In terms of non-communicable diseases, people are stressed. Instead of going fishing to feed their family, they went to the shop and buy tin fish. Look at the kind of cyclical impacts it had. So these are the real challenge that we do face. We do face with dengue fever, which is a main vector-borne disease of concern in the Pacific. In terms of diarrhea, we have evidence, anecdotal evidence linking to climate. A recent study shows that for every 1 degree in climate change, in increase in temperature, there was a 3% increase in diarrhea cases the month after. So these are evidence that is telling us that it is actually happening. So what are we going to do about it? What are we challenged to do about it? In the Pacific, our first point is that there needs to be a strong leadership role in terms of advancing the health issues. While progress has been made on climate change and health actions in the Pacific, we would like to thank the World Health Organization's the Regional Director for the Western Pacific in its leadership role. In 2019, they formed what was called they established a regional platform on climate change, the environment and health. So this has begun the process of identifying what are the key issues that needs to form the platform of climate and health nexus. And later that year, the WHO Regional Committee for the Western Pacific also adopted something called Towards the Healthiest and Safest Region. I'm sure colleagues are familiar with this. But the point that I would like to raise here is that there needs to be clear-cut leadership roles from our Asia-Pacific region in tackling these health issues. Secondly, in terms of climate change adaptation plans, which our colleague also mentioned, we have made progress in the development of health national adaptation plans, or the equivalent. Countries like Fiji, Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Federal States of Micronesia, Palau, Solomon Islands, Samoa, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. However, there are still gaps that needs to be addressed. I think it was also raised earlier by our colleague from ESCAP that the importance of investing in human and financial resources for these adaptation and mitigation measures to be able to be understood by our citizens, to be able to read what is in there at the periphery of climate change work at the national level. The second would be probably strengthening the climate resilience and environmental sustainability of healthcare facilities. You will see that there's a stress in terms of health infrastructure, health facilities. We've seen that in COVID-19. Fiji being a small island country, our population is not even 1 million, but we've stressed throughout in terms of trying to manage COVID throughout. The other countries, some other countries in the Pacific, they were fortunate that I think 1 or 2 were not affected by the coronavirus. But for those that were heavily affected, like my own, we had really to divert resources in order to enable our health infrastructure cope. And we thank all our international partners who assisted us in one way or another to overcome or to go through COVID-19. So the stress in the infrastructure is also an important aspect for us that needs to be brought to our Asia-Pacific region. For a One Health approach, a dedicated One Health approach, we will need continuous leadership and guidance. When we gather evidence and look at what really matters, you will see that this is an issue that cannot any longer be just discussed. Then we need to walk the talk. We really need to walk the talk. As I said yesterday in the meeting yesterday, the region needs to show leadership. We cannot just depend on promises that say that we will adapt. No, I think leadership needs to, from the Asia Pacific region, is really needed in order for us to tackle these challenges that we do face. There are other institutional support, for instance, FAO. I'm not going to speak on that because Scott has already alluded to earlier some of the issues that they do in the Pacific. But again, in saying that, the linkage between food security and health nexus, again, this is another concern that we do have. As the illustration that I said earlier, it's much easier to go and buy rice instead of planting your own organic root crops. This leads to other issues, climatic issues. So these are the real challenges that we do face. I'll stop there, Scott. Sorry, I can go on and on citing examples, but in the interest of time, I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. That's really a fantastic intervention. And really, what I appreciate most is that I think you featured some of the most important issues that you're facing in Fiji, but I think are very relevant for the Pacific. Yes. And these are issues that relate largely to leadership, to infrastructures, and to bridging some of the coordination between the sectors that needs to continue to evolve and improve. And what I like most is you're a fan of actions
Yeah.
and not words.
Not words.
And I couldn't agree more. That's what we need. We need to walk the talk. So thank you very much. Okay, next I would like to call on Professor Nitish Debnath, who is joining us from Bangladesh to speak about your perspective on strengthening the environment health nexus and One Health. And Nitish, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scott, and thank you very much for inviting me to this important event. Ladies and gentlemen, I was very keenly listening to the previous presentations and all the remarks of His Excellency. And I will tell you about where are we in Bangladesh, with this context. And that's what I am going to share with you with our own context. And if you see that why One Health should be linked with a very strong environmental component in Bangladesh, that's what I would like to show here. As you know, Bangladesh is a very small country, only 56,000 square mile area, and we have a population of 166 million, maybe a little bit more than that, and as one of the higher density country in the world. And it is one of the regions where we have the hotspots of emerging and re-emerging diseases. Our agricultural intensification is unprecedentedly proceeding in the, at the moment, including the poultry production, livestock production, plant production, and food production altogether. And it is also very vulnerable at the moment. And our natural resources, including the water, which is not also very in a high standard, 50% of the tube well exceeds the WHO recommendation. And in our dry season, we suffer severely in some of the regions of our country, the water shortage, as a drought, and also the linkage between human, animal, proximity is so close everywhere in the country. And if you see these slides, the natural disaster. This is a slide we have taken from Raila, and as you can see, it is a very natural here, and also the habitat. The natural habitats is also very, as you can see, that wildlife habitat destruction that is also impacting. So as a whole, what you have already talked in the previous presentation, in all those situations, Bangladesh is desperately need in this sort of practices, the interdependence of health, of human, animal, environment, so much so that we cannot really take one from other, and we have to think in a very strong, unifying, integrated way. And for that thing, we started our One Health journey in 2008. It is a very organic development. It was neither, funded by any donor nor by the government during that time. It is a power of professional awareness across different disciplines and profession. We started our One Health journey in 2008 and launched a One Health civil society platform, what we call One Health Bangladesh. And since then, we have been, advocating, networking, communicating across different disciplines, sectors, agencies, activists all together. And that was our first milestone. In 2012, we organized a 4-day workshop in support of WHO, FAO, UNICEF, and Dr. Scott, if you remember, you were there. And we developed a very important document, what we call National One Health Strategic Framework and Action Plan, and that was validated. And then it took a little bit of time to get the endorsement from the government. And finally, in 2015, we got it endorsed by the governments in the 3 ministries, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock, and Ministry of Environment and Forest. And on 2016, we were able to establish a 3-tier coordination mechanism according to the strategic framework. And it is one in the ministerial level, what we call the steering committee, interagency level, what we call One Health technical committee, technical advisory committee. And finally, we have a strong One Health secretariat located in the Institute of Epidemiology and Disease Control, which is a public health institute, and functioning as a One Health Secretariat. And finally, in 2017, we also secured some government funding directly to make this coordination functional, and with the support of the government budget, what we call operational budget. And since then, One Health Secretariat, One Health Bangladesh, and they are working hand in hand to really promote and practice One Health in Bangladesh. In all these three areas, all this journey, environment and forest were very actively involved in this process. And Forest Department is the government agency for taking care of natural resources, including forest. And also there are some very strong advocacy and activist organizations like BAPA, what we call Bangladesh Environmental Movement. They are very strongly involved with this journey, and they are still in this process. And the strategic framework, if you see, we have 9 components during that time, and one of these is wildlife and ecology. So our focus on One Health and the wildlife, ecology, environment was never lost. It was always there. But important part, the vision that we have put forward in the strategic framework, also we included the ecosystem as a very important component, what we call a thriving ecosystem. Just now what you were talking about, and one of the goals, in the 3 goals, we also included, one of the goals is to apply sound environmental principles of One Health in the strategic framework. And then since then, we have been working together very actively, as I mentioned at the very beginning. The Forest Department was with us, civil society, BAPA was with us, biodiversity ecosystem in the One Health strategy, and action plan is highly focused. In the three-tier coordination mechanism, the Environment and Forest Ministry is actively involved, and Forest Department is also one of the members of our One Health Secretariat. In terms of joint surveillance, they are also contributing in Nipah viral infection surveillance. Officers from the Forest Department are also seconded to our One Health Secretariat, and they are also trained as a One Health Fellow in the Messi University. And most importantly, what currently we are doing at the moment in collaboration with environment and all other departments, we are trying to develop a training program, as Dr. Scott has already mentioned. Bangladesh is one of the piloting countries to develop a One Health focused FETP WEBI, what is called the field training program for wildlife, environment, biodiversity, and ecosystem. And we have been working on that. And we are trying to develop some sort of synergies between field training in the public health, in the veterinarians, and also in the one that is coming up, WEBI. And when we talk about these things, I just want to highlight very recently, we made a sort of assessment of the environmental forest sector stakeholder mapping. 26 organizations met and made a need assessment, what we can do in the environment and forest sector. That is the mapping we did. And Dr. Scott, you are there. In the picture, you can see here the participant. And it's not only the participant, the high-level commitment. We got the Director General of Environment, now, Chief Conservator of the Forest, representation from the Forest and Environment Ministry, and we also have the representation from One Health Secretariat and One Health Bangladesh. In this situation, what we did, we identified that, there is a significant role that the Environment and Forest Department can play. This is one of the assessments that we made in the One Health in the prevention of further zoonotic disease. And also the environment is less engaged, particularly in one area. We have a department, what we call the Department of Forest. They are mostly a regulatory organization, but their engagement it is less. And we, very importantly in this assessment, we loudly spoke about that their role is very important, and the linkage that we can see between human health, animal health, and environment is very strong in the context of Bangladesh. And for these things, I think we need an intervention, a better understanding for getting solution in our context. And for that thing, we are trying to really focus on the health risk, coming from biodiversity, ecosystem, wildlife, and multi-sectoral collaboration, multidisciplinary approach. There is no other option, and self-assessment of their environment and forest as an indicator in biodiversity ecosystem. These are the few, high-level findings of this assessment, and now we are working on these things. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude with one thing, that it is One Health framework cannot be used only to justify and identify the control of health risks, but also to identify a very positive model for healthy coexistence, well-being, and sustainable interconnected. For that thing, farm with animals, if we managed using a One Health principle, that will optimize the health and well-being of humans, including farm workers, farm families, communities as a whole. And that sort of model we have to develop this way to really keep our planet healthy, to keep our environment healthy, all together as set of healthy planet. And for that thing, we are currently working with one project, what we call One Health Poultry Hub. Our focus is basically to develop a sort of sustainable coexistence of the food production, not only production, but also to take care of the environment, take care of the human health, as sort of a healthy production system that we can develop. That is our focus with this One Health Poultry Hub. So altogether, what I really want to see that it's a very great initiative that environment got to be in the focus. It cannot remain as a sideline. They have to be a very key player in the One Health journey of Bangladesh as a whole, the planet, and also in the region. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Nitish, and we really appreciate hearing the very specific country examples of how you've moved forward in Bangladesh with One Health. I particularly appreciate the process by which you've put together a One Health strategic framework, the collaboration mechanisms, the technical advisory group, and also the engagement specifically of the Environment and Forestry Ministry. I think that this is really quite a unique example, and Bangladesh has a lot to be proud of with the status of your One Health programming there. It's really an example of how to move forward for potentially other countries in the region. So thank you for your inputs. And also, I would like to also acknowledge the environment and forestry sector needs assessment outcomes. I think that's also helped guide perhaps and identify some of the gaps that need to be addressed in going forward. So well done. And for those who don't know, Dr. Nitish is also a member of that One Health high-level expert panel. And so we, at a global level, appreciate all your inputs to supporting One Health. So thank you very much. Okay, next I would like to ask Ms. Marilyn Santiago, who is with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, to please make her intervention. And just a reminder, if we could keep to 6, 7, 8 minutes, we're running a bit over time, and we want to try to keep relatively close to what our projected time frame was. So over to you, Marilyn, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Dr. Scott and everyone. I'm here to present the mainstreaming biodiversity in One Health efforts and some of the initiatives in the ASEAN region led by the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. Okay. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my slides. Okay, so just a quick introduction. The ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is an intergovernmental organization that facilitates cooperation and coordination on the conservation of biodiversity in the region. We support the member states in the region on their implementation of the CBD strategic plan for biodiversity. And this is consistent with the ASEAN Agenda 2025 and the Sustainable Development Goals. The ASEAN, or the Southeast Asian region, with may be small in size but globally significant. We only occupy 3% of the world's total land area, but home to around 18% of the world's known species. And it is the center of the world's marine biodiversity. In terms of biodiversity conservation, the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is mandated to lead the protected area management, invasive alien species prevention, ecosystem restoration, ADS, and sustainable finance, and other components related to biodiversity conservation. One of the flagship programs in the ASEAN is what we call the ASEAN Heritage Parks. This is a regional network of protected areas that represent the best of the best ecosystem of protected areas in the region. It aims to generate greater collaboration among the ASEAN member states in preserving their shared natural heritage. If you see the blue dots, these are just to represent the marine ecosystem, marine heritage parks in the area. So how do we mainstream biodiversity? We work with various sectors, with agriculture, urban ecosystem, tourism, education, health, of course, and other sectors. In terms of biodiversity mainstreaming in health, as we all know, biodiversity matters to everyone because of the ecosystem that it provides to us. And as mentioned by Dr. Scott earlier, there's an increased demand from the growing population, and this has caused several damages to our biological resources. In the region, we are almost 700 million people in the area, and the biodiversity loss increased risk to human health as well. And as a response to the recent COVID-19 crisis, the region, the ASEAN governing body, has approved the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which also includes the broad strategy that is focused on advancing towards a more sustainable and resilient future. So this covers the nature-based solution efforts as well. For health and biodiversity, there has been an exchange among national experiences and best practices on mainstreaming biodiversity and health interlinkages. And so far, they have identified potential possible joint activities to achieve human health and biodiversity co-benefits for consideration in the respective national biodiversity strategic action plans and other national health plans. For biodiversity mainstreaming in the agriculture sector, the ACD, in close coordination with the ASEAN member states, promotes biodiversity-based livelihood programs among the ASEAN heritage parks. And one of the most successful efforts or intervention has been the vegetable and honey beekeeping, which improved awareness among the communities on their responsibility to conserve and protect biodiversity, and resulting to a reduced environmental exploitation and also better income for the livelihood workers as well. Other efforts on agriculture, mainstreaming biodiversity in agriculture, is we help promote best practices among the heritage areas. We spread awareness on the role of ecosystems in supporting agriculture and promotion of urban gardening, other sustainable agricultural practices. For urban biodiversity, the ECD has been facilitating discussions on the applicability of Singapore Index on Cities Biodiversity. Through this, there's an assessment on the readiness of the cities to integrate goals of biodiversity conservation and its principles to their respective city development plans. Other cross-cutting initiatives, ACB with other member states and other supporting institutions and donor organizations. We provide capacity building, knowledge management, awareness campaign, policy development, and partnership building. And these are all in line with the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Some specific One Health initiatives that have been conducted by the center is organizing a regional workshop to address interlinkages between human health and biodiversity in the ASEAN region. There is also an assessment of the nexus of between biodiversity and health, and the formulation of policy brief on biodiversity and health nexus. We are very privileged to have been supported or being supported by the FAO. And through their support, we are mainstreaming biodiversity into One Health capacity development, which Dr. Scott and his team has been very helpful with. We also provide other various capacity building efforts, such as training programs or dialogues among ASEAN member states, where there are to identify the links between human health and urban context, and capacity building on therapeutic horticulture. The AHP, or the ASEAN Heritage Parks Conference, was also a venue where the AHP managers had a session on protected area, human health, and preventing pandemics, where they discuss or showcase their good practices on how to respond to the recent COVID-19 pandemic. And another program that the ACD is also leading is through our Biodiversity Information and Management Unit. We continuously update maps on new and emerging infectious diseases outbreaks. In the ASEAN Biodiversity Dashboard, you can see the link to this site if you want to know more about this information. Other initiatives, there's an ongoing study on the development of biodiversity-focused surveillance mechanism for zoonotic diseases. There is also a proposed membership to the ASEAN's One Health group on the regional strategic plan. And since a few years ago, we have been conducting interactive webinar series. We facilitate the AHPs to share their COVID response and their status, and also the effects of COVID, and also the activities of the ASEAN youth during the COVID pandemic. There's another topic on wildlife conservation and zoonotic diseases, nature-based solutions, and other related topics. Currently, we intend to administer the second survey among the AHPs to identify the COVID response and status that they are now experiencing. Because 2 years ago, we conducted an initial survey, and now we want to know what are the status and how do they respond, and what are the next steps among the AHPs in terms of COVID-19. So what are the ways forward? We hope to develop and mainstream the One Health regional implementation plan. This is also part of the FAO-supported project with the ACD. We hope to continue and enhance knowledge sharing platforms and existing databases such as zoonosis, or perhaps establish an inventory for new ones, such as nutritional resources that will promote dietary diversity in the region. We recognize that we need to conduct more studies and dialogues with experts and other relevant institutions, not just with the health sector, but also with other relevant stakeholder groups. And these will all be a part of the inputs to the regional framework or plans in the ASEAN, and perhaps pointers also to achieve the Convention on the Biological Diversity Targets and other multilateral agreements. So thank you. I hope I made that in 7 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you so much, Marilyn. That's fantastic, and really great to hear all of the exciting work that the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is undertaking, really ranging from sort of a regional heritage parks program, and some of the specifics embedded within that are actually, you know, your mention of vegetable and beekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
These are really great examples of perhaps areas of work that help ensure local community engagement, food and nutrition security, livelihood security, and resilience of communities. So it's really wonderful to hear that these are areas that ACB is taking on, as well as the bigger and regional approaches that you're taking with the Singapore Index and even the One Health regional programming and planning. And I know that at ASEAN level, in addition to the Center for Biodiversity, you also have a complementary group and body that is working on diseases and public health issues, as well as veterinary sector issues. So I think ASEAN at a broad regional level really has a regional leadership role that could be played going forward. So really appreciate your contribution here, and thank you very much.
Thank you also
Okay.
for inviting us. Thanks.
Okay, super. I understand that Fithria may have to be catching an airplane. So I want to check if you have a few moments to spare with us before you run off to the airport. And if so, we would love to hear from you about the ASEAN Youth Forum. And I hope we don't cost you your missing your flight. So I know you have motivation to be quick here.
Thank you so much, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Indonesia. So my name is Fitria. I'm currently as a project associate in ASEAN Youth Forum. It's an honor for me to have the opportunity speaking here on behalf of the youth and as well as my organizations. So yeah, basically, I just amazed about the presentations from the expert speakers as well as from the UNEP, ESCAP, and FAO, WHO team that already doing a great job to create the joint actions and talking about the One Health itself. By the way, I am a medical doctor too, so I just graduated from medical school in July 2022, and I've been working in environmental issues since 2015. So talking about the One Health and how this youth can be involved, this is very interesting because along with my journey as the youth environment activist, I see that a lot of things that intersection for everything, including the health and also the environment itself. Can you move to the second slide, please? Yeah, so I'm going to emphasize about this youth participations because yeah, I'm here to on behalf of the youth, and it's already mentioned before that the future generations will continue the fight, will continue the efforts that has been made for this day. And what will be the important is to promote the equal and meaningful participation, because I saw the draft and it's already great to have that joint actions and including the youth as one of the stakeholders. But this equal and meaningful participation is really needed to ensure that not only we are not only someone that passive to accept the draft or to be consulted, but we need to be involved to as the key partners, which will play an important role to develop the draft also together in the One Health issues. And this will be important to know that and note in local or even in the national level, youth participation in the One Health will help to promote more inclusive approach by the governments itself. As I am part of the medical workers and medical world, that I know that this One Health is not really mainstreamed in my city, in my country. So youth can play that important role to promote that, to mainstream that One Health to be understood by everyone. Not only belongs to certain group of people, the youth activists, or it's for the doctors or for the government, but it's for everyone, because we are now living on the same planet with the same climate crisis impacts that devastating our life. And next slide, please. So I think what will be very useful and meaningful for us, not only as the key stakeholders that mentioned for the consultations or to be consulted later on, but also as the key partner, which we will have an equal opportunity to be speak at the same table to have an equal opportunity to be engaged during the policy making processes. And as my experience last week in Bangkok, I really appreciate how this ASEAN, especially region, try to be more inclusive for youth to be involved in the process, not only put them as the key stakeholder, but also the key partner together at the same table. We create the policy making. So because youth as the one of the vulnerable and affected groups, that's why we have our skills, we have our experience that can be valuable to add for the perspective, for the approachment, and also helping to disseminate some of the key information, as well as become one of the stakeholders that can provide more information based on the surveys or anything. So this One Health approach not only to talk about how this environment, people, and also the animals, but also how this approach in One Health can be inclusive for everyone and be and understand, also recognize the intersectionality of the youth itself. And the last slide for me. So everything that goes around for the youth should be also involve youth during the process, because youth not only should be the passive beneficiary, but also active participants, because nothing without us, nothing with us without us. So yeah, thank you for me. That's all from me. Thank you so much. And I'll handle the floor back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you so much, Fitriya, and we really appreciate you hanging in there, and I hope you don't miss your flight because of us. But I know at some point it would really be fantastic to follow up and really understand if we can find some practical and tangible ways to engage the youth and the community that you work with, and the larger role that you can play as a stakeholder, and to make you an equal partner, as you said. So thank you so much. I understand that we have perhaps one question that is in the chat that we want to ask Yi-An to address. And unfortunately, okay, we have one other question that we'll honor in the room, but because of time, we're really pushed to try to move to the closing. So I apologize. If you have other questions, please do put them in the chat and we will come back to you in written responses. But over to you, Yi-An, for the one question that I know we do have.
Thank you very much, Scott. So we have a question from Della Leonor regarding how do we set up committee. So I just want to highlight that political leadership is important, as the ambassador mentioned, and participation is important, awareness raising is important, and we really need to include stakeholders from both health and environment sectors. And with that, I would invite you to look at the policy guide, to look at FAO-UNEP, WHO documents, because you can see many examples there. And for the policy guide, I also want to highlight that we had the opportunity to collaborate with health professions from IISD, LIS in particular, with the generous support from Wellcome Trust to really make this happen. And we hope this can provide important and informative information for how to operationalize this process, including the committee. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for answering. And we have one question in the room here, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Prem Singh Tharu from Nepal and representing from Asia Indian People Pack, Chiang Mai, Thailand. Thank you very much to all presenters and very good informations, and it's the capacity building for us as well to learn about One Health means environment and One Health. Here I didn't find my observation, I didn't find indigenous communities, women and local communities considered as knowledge holders, because they are the who producing those nutritious food. 70% our diseases are we can treat by our food systems, our food habits, but they are only considered as the vulnerable groups. They are not vulnerable. Of course, they might be because they can't afford the medical treatments in big hospitals, but they are producing their 70% nutritious food, which are healthy, and it means that taking care of the environment, that taking care of the biodiversity, ecosystem and all. So they are not only the vulnerable, but more they are the means environmental means they are the part of environmental safeguards, and then they are the knowledge holders. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We do appreciate, and it's a very relevant comment, that local communities and particularly the long coexistence that they have with both nature and their own ability to generate resources and food security and medicinal uses of local biodiversity. I think that those are all really very relevant and valuable. And I think the challenge we have at a broader level with One Health is how do we take advantage of and learn from and integrate that local knowledge into the One Health programming and policies going forward. So really a great point. Thank you so much for your intervention. Okay. I want to first apologize because we've kept our very important closing remarks. They've become slightly delayed due to the enthusiasm for One Health today. But I'd really like to invite Deshan Sering, the Asia Pacific Regional Director of UNEP, who has really made a big effort to join us here, and we appreciate your presence and really honored, and we'd like to invite you to give us closing remarks from today's event.
Thank you very much, Scott. Ambassador Yavoli, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you to the panelists, country representatives, participants from the multidisciplinary backgrounds for a really fruitful and productive dialogue on the Environment Health Nexus, One Health in Asia Pacific. We've heard a wealth of what is actually happening in this area from the numerous presentations. We've heard the importance of integrating the environment dimension into health. We've heard about the quadripartite alliance for One Health in the region. And I want to congratulate our colleagues from ESCAP and the International Institute for Sustainable Development for a very successful launch of the policy guide operationalizing the Environment Health Nexus in Asia and the Pacific. There will be a wealth of knowledge in this policy guide, and this will, I note colleagues all saying that this was, a capacity building event too. So I think this guide will prove very valuable. We've heard very important messages and recommendations to support further strengthening the Environment Health Nexus, One Health in Asia Pacific. Ambassador Yavoli stresses the leadership role, policy coherence, and also the health consequences of the climate crises. Many delegates have come from the 27th Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC. We've heard from the Emission Gap Report, the Adaptation Gap Report, and we now know that the window for 1.5 degrees is very small. We know that we're living in a already warming world of 1.1 degrees, and you can see the devastating impacts. You've seen the monsoon floods in South Asia. So we know that we already have to start to think about a health infrastructure. We've got to start to think about the consequences, because it's not, before we always talked about climate saying it's, it's in the future. It's not in the future, it's in our generation. The triple planetary crises, we've talked about biodiversity loss, pollution, waste, quality of life, livelihoods, health, well-being. And again, it's all interconnected. We can't look at this from siloed approaches. We can't talk about, and I know Scott talked about the very important different ASEAN centers looking at different issues. We don't have time. I mean, the window is small. We have to integrate the knowledge. We have to come together. And I'm so pleased that we have FAO, we have ESCAP, we have WHO, we have UNEP, and we are trying the UN system to really come together, because we don't have time anymore. The environmental foundations of the planetary and human health crises are now well understood. It's represented, but we need concrete action. So we're going to need to facilitate more holistic policy making by further evidence and links between biodiversity, food systems, climate health, and to support decision makers and relevant actors to take measures to prevent future pandemics. In 2016, when UNEP produced a report on zoonotics in our foresight, it was, some colleagues read it. That was 2016. I mean, you start to look at zoonotic diseases, so linked to planetary health. And we've talked about we put ecosystems on ecosystems, we invade our, fragmentation, and then we're surprised that diseases from animals come into human health. I mean, we have to talk about animal health, planetary health, human health. It's all interconnected. We need to break out of silos, and we need to work towards ensuring that environment sector does play a pivotal role in the One Health related initiative. So when we start to think of there's an important global milestone, we have the upcoming Convention on Biological Diversity's 15th Conference of Parties in Montreal, and we will adopt a robust post-2022 global biodiversity framework. This will be essential for a sustainable shared future and for the vision of living in harmony with nature. And this really is an opportunity for member states to come together to make sure that we have an ambitious global biodiversity framework post-2020 so we can protect and restore the health of our planet, which is foundational to supporting our economies, our livelihoods, food security, health, and quality of life worldwide. UNEP with WHO, we are working with the government of Indonesia. We will organize the Asia Pacific Regional Forum on Health and Environment. It'll be held in May 2023 Senior Officials Meeting, 2024 Ministerial segment. And we really need greater synergies between government departments to address environment and health. And I do hope many of you will engage, as this issue is critical. Today, we heard this growing interest, this political momentum for a clean, safe, healthy, sustainable environment. We need to harness this momentum into actual commitments at national, regional, and global levels. It has to be concrete commitments. We now have really important frameworks. We have ambitious statements. How does this actually translate into our lives? I really hope this newly launched policy guide will turn into political commitments and tangible action. We at the UN stand ready to support member states to strengthen the environment dimension of One Health. And to conclude, let me thank ESCAP, WHO, and UNEP for organizing this side event. And I thank Scott for his excellent moderation, as well as to all of you for these inspiring discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Deshan, and really, I don't even want to touch your speech because I think you really captured the essence of the important elements that we need to keep in mind, as well as some of the important initiatives that are coming in the next year or two that we all need to chip in and collaborate and work together on. So thank you so much for making time to give us those closing remarks. Much appreciated. Okay, I think before we let everyone go, I was told that we need to ask everyone who's online to turn on your camera so we can see your beautiful faces and take a picture. So please, I see already the beautiful faces of some of the speakers, but we want to see the other beautiful faces that are out there. All right, and I don't know who is managing the photo. Okay. All right, it appears that we've gone over time and perhaps have lost some of our participants, but okay. All right. Great. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank again all of the speakers, all of the panelists, all of the opening and closing remarks, and everybody here in the room. Thank you for your time. It's really been a pleasure, and I hope we have a chance to work together on One Health in the near future. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Namaskar.